first would like to say that what we are saying here, or at least I'm saying, is not from any official document of the party, but based on my understanding of in which direction the party is thinking, and therefore would be a factor in how the government will make its policy. I'm flattered that Mr. Sunimal said that if I stood in elections here, I would win, but please don't repeat it in India, because many of my enemies would support you in ensuring that I go. First of all, I'll deal with the question of how India under Modi will be distinctively different due to his personality. In fact, the mere fact that Narendra Modi became the Prime Minister represents a major change or a paradigm change in our politics, particularly in its social dynamics. Unlike all past Prime Ministers, Modi comes from the most backward, poverty-stricken castes and has literally worked himself way up, with no family legacy in politics to propel him. Most of the past Prime Ministers were from the upper caste. In particular, 6 were from Brahmins, 2 were Kshatriyas, who are the fighting class, and 5 from the forward classes. And Modi is, in fact, the first from the most backward class. As a pracharak of the RSS, which means essentially propagating the authority to propagate and organize the party at a particular level, Modi spent a good part of his life in field work, and therefore he didn't parachute into this office, much like Mr. Devagowda did. All of a sudden he became Prime Minister, much to everybody's disbelief. Mr. Gujral was sipping coffee in India International Centre when one of the prominent members of the coalition went to him and said, "Get up, you have to leave because you have to become Prime Minister." So he said, "Prime Minister, which country?" So, and therefore in none of these circumstances such a person from such a background has become Prime Minister. Narendra Modi is not a nominee of anybody for Prime Minister. It was almost an universal demand, length and breadth of the country. Jawaharlal Nehru, incidentally, would never have been Prime Minister if there had been a vote in the party. In fact, there was a vote in the party. And out of 15 provincial Congress committee chairmen, 14 voted for Sardar Patel. And only 1 voted for Jawaharlal Nehru. But it was the influence of Mahatma Gandhi, who probably felt perhaps that Patel would be a very disciplined person, would accept number 2 position. And if Nehru didn't become Prime Minister, he might disrupt the whole process, creating the feeling that what the British had been propagating, that Indians can't rule themselves. But Nehru was foisted on the country as the Prime Minister by Mahatma Gandhi. Lal Bahadur Shastri was the choice of Jawaharlal Nehru. Morarji Desai was the choice of Jai Prakash Narayan, because the party had actually voted to make Jagjeevan Ram as Prime Minister. And of course Manmohan Singh was a nominee of Sonia Gandhi. So unlike all others, he has become Prime Minister in his own right. And therefore that would certainly be his frame of mind in making decisions. Second thing is that the second point I would wish to make is that the relevance of this paradigm change of Mr. Modi become Prime Minister will be felt in the SAARC countries in particular, and in particular in Sri Lanka. You have already seen that despite all the protests, your president was honorably invited to be present in the swearing-in ceremony of his becoming Prime Minister. Your foreign minister has been assured that will never agree to making human rights investigation as a punitive or as a intrusive weapon. And therefore, you will find that Mr. Modi will give first priority to the SAARC countries. He went to Bhutan as his first visit. The circle around beyond the SAARC countries would be Asia. In particular, countries like Israel, Iran, Japan, and Vietnam and Indonesia are countries which have now been selected for special initiatives. And finally, of course, would be the global role that India could play. The third aspect which I want to bring to your notice is that unlike the recent past, India will be equidistant from both the United States and China. In fact, I think it would be more appropriate to say that India would seek a tripartite or a triangular or a triumvirate role for India, China, United States being the three most populous countries of the world and having the GDP of the three largest GDPs for the countries. We expect to see this SAARC formulation from Modi in the next meeting in Kathmandu, when many things could be discussed. At the moment, SAARC has been a very effete and a weak organization because it can't discuss bilateral issues amongst ourselves. And there are issues which require unanimity in putting on the agenda. So major restructuring of SAARC would be probably discussed in Kathmandu. So therefore we have a situation today that India would pursue its foreign policy, as was pointed out by previous speakers, will pursue its foreign policy without allowing any sectarian, narrow, regional issues to exercise a veto. In the past 10 years, our policy towards Sri Lanka suffered from the fact that there was a veto of the state of Tamil Nadu. More than the people of Tamil Nadu, the government and the principal parties of Tamil Nadu. The election results do not show, the 2014 election results to Parliament do not show that the people regard this as a major issue or even a minor issue. In fact, all the proponents of a hard line towards Sri Lanka were defeated in the election, and some of them very, very badly. So therefore, we would always say that foreign policy shall be guided by national interests, and national interests shall supersede state interests. We certainly would like to see the state interest as an input into making the decision, but once the decision is made, it will be on what's good for the country, and on that basis we will make the decision. I think there was in fact a great substantial opposition to the President being invited for the oath-taking ceremony of the Prime Minister in India, but Mr. Narendra Modi overruled that. Now, Sri Lanka is a case for which all of us are very keen to develop very good relations. We have no fundamental conflict with Sri Lanka. And I think the issue of a separate Elam is also perhaps undergoing a review in your own country. The affidavit which I believe the TNA has promised, and since it's been promised to the court, it would be contempt of court not to keep that promise. The affidavit which has been promised to the Supreme Court, which we have read in reports in India, say that they no more subscribe to the concept of a separate, independent Elam. We have been very clear that the United Nations Human Rights Commission has a role only when there is a genocide identified. Even the UN resolutions do not say that Sri Lanka has committed genocide. It's only the Tamil extremists living in London mostly who have been saying this. And therefore, I think in the United Nations Human Rights Commission, India would be far more supportive of Sri Lanka's position than ever before. We are already the largest trade partner of Sri Lanka, with $5.5 billion in trade, which has gone up in the last year at 13.6%. We are amongst the largest investors of FDI, with about a total of 800 million so far since 2003. And in tourism, we are now number one, and the rate of tourists to Sri Lanka is rising at the rate of 17.5% per year. So we now need to do what? India and Sri Lanka. We must accept some of the mistakes that we committed on both sides. It was wrong of Indira Gandhi to train terrorist forces, or those forces militant forces which turn terrorists. And I would say that perhaps Sri Lanka missed several opportunities when agreements were signed with people like Selvanayagam and then not honored. That it all brought this to this situation that we saw before in 2009. But as an Indian, and I can say that most Indians share this view, we are very proud of your President for decisively finishing a sinister terrorist organization which was a threat to our country too. And therefore, let no activity in the international arena subtract from that. Sometimes I wonder whether this whole human rights issues has been contrived to water down or to belittle or to reduce this massive achievement. I know of no other country which has so decisively finished terrorism of the kind, and this was no ordinary terrorism, because the LTT had in fact even manufactured an aeroplane which came and bombed your airport here. And if they had lasted a little longer, they would have had a submarine too, which you were able to prevent by the early action. But if you look around the world, no country has had the kind of clear success in eliminating terrorism as you have. Today, even Tamils up in north admit that at least they know when their children go to school, they will return back in the night. When their husbands go to work, they will return back in the night. There's more to be done. I'm not saying it's not been done. This is for you to do. And if our friendship develops sufficiently, and our interaction defends sufficiently, we will give you ideas on what could be done, what could not be done, whether you accept it or not. But there are a few myths that need to be exploded. First of all, please don't refer to this Tamil-Sinhalese conflict as ethnic. There's nothing ethnic about it. We have been brainwashed by the British historians for too long to regard ourselves as ethnically divided. For years we were told that Aryans were one community and Dravidians were another community. But it turns out now that it's totally false. because recent modern studies on DNA shows that Indians all have the same DNA. Even in the fringes of India, the Indian DNA dominates. And whether the person is a Brahmin or a scheduled caste, also the DNA is the same. Whether it's a Hindu or Muslim, the DNA is the same. This ethnicity is a figment of the British imagination. And in Sri Lanka also this has been fed. What you have is perhaps a linguistic group division and based on misunderstanding. But it is not ethnic. And therefore we have to revise our history books, if you ask me, to see that this is put in the right perspective. In Tamil Nadu we have a hard time convincing the Dravidian parties. There are parties with the name Dravidian. Actually the word Dravidian is a word coined by Adi Shankaracharya, where he said two Sanskrit words he did a sandhi of, or merged it, Tra and Vid, which means where the three coastlines meet, which is South India. But somehow Karunanidhi and his predecessors in the Dravidian movement decided to make this an issue, and the British encouraged them to do it so that they are not part of the national freedom movement. Karunanidhi propagated that Ravan was a Dravidian king. It turns out that Ravan was not a Dravidian king in that sense. He was not even a regional, he was not even a Tamil king. He was not even a Sinhalese king. He was in fact born in the outskirts of Delhi in a place called Noida. His village is still has a placard saying here Ravan was born. His wife was born in Meerut. And then he went to Kailash and Mansarovar, where he prayed to Lord Shiva, who gave him a boon. And then he decided to conquer territories which were prosperous, and he found that Guber had developed Sri Lanka to such great heights that he thought he should have it. Of course, nowadays Karunanidhi does not speak about Ravan anymore, but he does speak about Ram. And I'm thankful to Sri Lanka for helping in preventing the demolition of Ram Setu through the Setu Samudram project. Your government conducted an environmental study, and your country has a right to have a view on it. The idea of cutting through a canal through the Park Strait and Gulf of Mannar, and have ship channels which are going around Sri Lanka to go through that. This project was proposed during the last government's tenure, and the idea was to cut through Ram Setu, or this Setu which Ram directed to be set up or produced. This naturally upset Karunanidhi, who was an atheist, who doesn't believe in Ram. He in fact keeps rubbishing Ram. Once I said in the Supreme Court that Ram Setu cannot be touched. So Karunanidhi publicly said, who's Swami to call it Ram Setu? Did Ram build it? Does he have an engineering degree? If so, from which college? Now, poetic justice would it be that next day he fell ill and he had to be admitted to Ramchandra Medical Hospital. So I wrote him a letter, thank God at least he has an MBBS. So I think that these kinds of things that have entered our mind must go. Sri Lankans and Tamils and North Indians, they're all from the same stock. People came from North India to Sri Lanka too. People went from Kerala and Tamil Nadu too. And there is therefore no ethnic difference between a Sinhala and a Tamil. And this must be thoroughly destroyed and demolished. And new history books need to be written on it. Second is the widespread feeling of the so-called Tamil Nadu factor in our policy. There is no Tamil Nadu factor. Repeatedly the people of Tamil Nadu have demonstrated that they don't care for this LTT and their support and the issue of Tamils in Sri Lanka. Yes, so they would be concerned if they got extensive reports of human rights violations. They will be concerned, but they will not make it the national policy. Your cricketer, Sangakkara, was not allowed to participate in a cricket match in Tamil Nadu. Next day he participated in Bangalore, and the entire Tamil population of Bangalore went to see him bat and cheer him. There is no such animosity. This is a handful of people, most of them financed by the leftover of the LTT money. And the cinema world of Tamil Nadu has benefited greatly from this money. Some of it came from the drug peddling that LTT did. So there, I can tell you, the elections, as I pointed out to you, have demonstrated that there is no overwhelming support or even big support or decisive support of Tamil Nadu for the problems that you are having or want to intervene in it. Even on the fishermen issue, we find that it is because of the fact that we don't have fish on our side, and the large companies which run the trawlers are putting pressure on the fishermen to go and cross the line, that this problem is arising. But ever since your president decided that henceforth the fishermen arrested would be presented in court and then released on bail, and that the trawler will not be returned, the problem has become much more manageable and less spoken of. I would urge Ms. Jayalalitha to visit Sri Lanka and see for herself and get a reality check. Some of these problems. So therefore, I would like this also to be disabused, that the people of Tamil Nadu are somewhat thirsting for some action in Sri Lanka. There will never be an issue in any election, it's never been. Even in 2009 it was not an issue. And finally, let me tell you, the targeting of Sri Lanka on this human rights issue has gone about as far as it has gone farther than it should have. Who are the countries who are pointing an accusing finger at Sri Lanka? The United States has taken the lead. Did we have ever human rights investigation into what happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki? British television and British politicians talk about it. I asked them, what did you do in World War II when Dresden was bombed, when there was not a single soldier in Dresden? The entire German population was wiped out by carpet bombing. Did you have human rights investigation? For that, the Americans tell me, this is all collateral damage of war. In what way is the anti-terrorist war, the deaths that took place of civilians, is not collateral damage? So therefore, I think this time for Sri Lanka, and certainly from my Indian side we do, to not be defensive about this anymore. And in fact, make sure that you don't give visas to people coming from Norway in the future. I'm certainly urging, my colleagues are of this view. One of my colleagues had even mentioned it today to the President. Let's de-link Indo-Sri Lanka relations from Tamil Nadu and Tamil problem. It can be one of the problems, but the major problem is economic development, cooperation, working together in the United Nations and other places, and creating an Asian personality for our global power structure, where Sri Lanka can contribute heavily. And let us therefore take up issues which have little or nothing to do with this, except as one of the issues that have to be dealt, and in private. If India is a friend of Sri Lanka, it should not raise these issues publicly, to raise it privately. I, however, add to you that although I know that you have implemented most of the 13th Amendment or 13th plus amendment, but there are items which need to be looked at. As a friend, I would say this is unnecessarily remaining as an unresolved issue. There must be a way by which the Sri Lankan Tamils also feel, whether they are justified in feeling or not is the issue. But I do know that they are particularly defensive and they are apprehensive, and therefore they should not become again a victim of those who say that I can give you a better world if you join with me and pick up arms. Because there are a lot of forces all over the world who want Sri Lanka not to succeed, who would like to see Sri Lanka brought to book, would like to see Sri Lanka controlled. And therefore, to the best of your intellectual ability and your President's capacity to take decisions, these remaining issues that are there should be addressed. And those of us in India who can help, we certainly would like to help you and see that once again a glorious Indo-Sri Lanka relations emerges. Thank you.